we were talking about different types of tissues. And in last lecture, we stopped here. We were talking about connective tissue, and you know that bone is a connective tissue, and two types of bones are present in the body: compact bone and spongy bone. Compact bone is the hard bone, and spongy bone is the soft honeycomb like bone that has a lot of spaces inside. If you see the structure, microscopic structure of a compact bone, it looks like this. Compact bone is formed by many columnar structures like this. Look at this. Many columns like this bundled together. That is the compact bone. And each column is the structural unit of compact bone. And each column is called an osteon. So, osteon is the structural unit of the compact bone. So now this is the compact bone, and if I make a cross section like this and see under the microscope, it will look like this, right? If I cut like this and see under the microscope, you will see many circles like this. So that is what you see here. Each circle is an osteon, right? So this is the compact bone. Now, this is one osteon, this is another osteon, right? Now, if I see the structure of an osteon, in the center of the osteon, you have a canal that is called the central canal. Very simple. So this is the central canal. Inside the central canal, you will find the blood vessels and nerves. So artery, vein, nerves, those are present inside the central canal. So blood, vessels and nerves pass through the central canal. We know that bones are vascular. Bones have blood vessels as well as nerves. So that's how the blood vessels and nerves are located inside the osteum. Now, around the central canal, you will see tiny cavities. Those are called lacunae. Lacunae are actually pouches, empty cavities, and inside the lacunae you have the bone cells, osteocytes. So you see these are osteocytes inside the lacunae. Osteocytes look like tiny spider like this and many legs. So now I can say osteocyte within lacunae. Okay, within lacunae. So all these lacunae have osteocytes inside, bone cells. In between the lacunae, you have hard matrix of bone. You know, connective tissue has cells and matrix, right? So, in between lacunae, the hard matrix of bone is present, and that hard matrix of bone is called lamella. Okay, lamella. So another thing, lacunae are connected to the central canal by very fine channels like this, thin like hair-like channels connect the central canal and lacunae, as well as fine channels connect lacunae to lacunae. So one lacunae is connected to another by those fine channels. Those are called canaliculi or canaliculi. So these fine channels are called canaliculi. Through these channels, fluid goes from the blood to the lacunae and from one lacunae to another. You know, inside the lacunae you have the bone cells, and those cells are alive. They need nutrition and oxygen. So from the blood, fluid carries nutrition and oxygen to those lacunae, and lacunae are also connected to each other, so the fluid can move from one lacunae to another. Okay, so that is the structure of the compact bone. Compact bone consists of many columnar structures, right, together, and each column is the osteum, that's the structural unit, and inside the osteum you have all these structures. Is it clear? Okay. So now if you see this picture, you will get the idea, the structure of the compact bone. Blood is a liquid form of connective tissue. That's why we say a special type of connective tissue is the blood, because it is liquid form and circulates throughout the body. Blood consists of cells and plasma. So if you see the blood under the microscope, you will see different types of blood cells: red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. Those are three types of blood cells. Red blood cells are red in color, and hemoglobin is present inside. That's why they look red, because hemoglobin is red colored pigment. Okay, so red blood cells. Then you will also see white blood cells. White blood cells are larger, and nucleus is not red, but under the microscope they look like pink or bluish color nucleus. Okay? And platelets are very tiny, small cells in the blood. So red blood cells for RBC, white blood cells for WBC, and platelets. Okay? Those are the cells, three types of cells. And you have the liquid part in between the cells, that is like matrix, and that liquid is called plasma. Plasma is the liquid part of the blood. So three types of cells and plasma. Okay. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue forms the nervous system. Right? Nervous tissue forms the nervous system. So which structures are formed by nervous tissue? You know, nervous system consists of brain, spinal cord, and many nerves, right? So those are the structures formed by the nervous tissue. Your brain, your spinal cord, and the nerves of the body. function of the nervous tissue in one sentence. If I ask you, tell me in one sentence, what's the function of nervous tissue? You'll say production and transmission of electrical impulse. Okay, generation and transmission of electrical impulse. In one sentence, that will be the good answer. Now, nervous tissue is highly sensitive and delicate. The tissue is highly sensitive and delicate, can easily die. Like if you just see that, if you stop blood circulation to your brain, like pressing here, the artery is taking the blood to the brain, you will get unconscious in minute, right? And may even die. So you see, highly sensitive. If I block circulation to my hand, still, after 1 minute if I leave it, will not die. But the brain tissue is highly sensitive, delicate, and quickly die. Okay? If, when neurosurgeons, they open the brain, they must be very careful that if the brain stays exposed to air for a long time, it will die. The tissue will start to deteriorate, will start to die. So
and
very
it doesn't
sensitive.
regenerate in any way?
No, usually not. So that is another thing, right? Once the brain tissue or nervous tissue dies, usually the cells don't regenerate. In epithelial tissue, I talked about that, quickly regenerates, right? But nervous tissue does not. That's why if, a neural disease occurs due to death of the brain, that person suffers throughout the life, usually. Like if paralysis, right? It's very, difficult to cure. Two types of cells are found in the nervous tissue. The main cells are called the neurons, and supporting cells are called the neuroglial cells. So those are two types of cells. And if you see a neuron, the main cells of the nervous tissue are neurons. If you see the structure of a neuron, you'll see a cell body, nucleus inside it, and multiple processes like this. So this is the cell body, nucleus. These are called dendrites, usually multiple, and single axon. So axon and dendrites are the processes come out from the cell body. Usually axon is single one and dendrite is multiple. So in the nervous tissue, you'll see many neurons like this. Those are the main cells, right? And in between, you'll see different types of neuroglial cells. These are called the supporting cells, okay? Neuroglia. Okay? Neuroglia. And these are the neurons. Conduction of electrical impulse or signal, I have already mentioned. Production and transmission of electrical signal is the function. The cell body produces the electrical impulse and processes transmit the electrical signal from one neuron to another. Nervous system is one of two control systems of your body. You know from first lecture, remember, two systems are called the control system, nervous and endocrine, right? And at that time I mentioned nervous is more powerful because it acts very fast, right? Quickly. So it is the main control system of the body and controls most of the body functions. Here you see the nervous system under the nervous tissue under the microscope. You see the neurons, and those very tiny dots, those are the neuroglial cells. Okay. Muscle. Three types of muscle tissues are found in the body. skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. I have already mentioned the location of those three types of muscle tissues. Just quickly, I am reminding you. Skeletal muscle is attached to the skeleton, bones. That's why it's skeletal, attached to the skeleton. Cardiac muscle is only found in the wall of the heart. Highly specialized type muscle, right? Only in the heart. Smooth muscle in the wall of tube-like structures I mentioned, and in the wall of hollow organs. What are the tube-like structures? Your esophagus, right? Small intestine, large intestine, blood vessels, arteries, veins, right? Trachea, pharynx, those are tube-like structures. And hollow organs like stomach, urinary bladder, uterus, those are the hollow organs. Make sense? So in the wall of those organs, you will find the smooth muscle. Cardiac muscle is voluntary or involuntary? What do you think? Involuntary. If you tell your heart to stop, it will not listen to you, right? And which is good, right? Sometimes we are very upset and say, I should die. But your heart won't listen to you. But skeletal muscle is voluntary, right? If you want to move your body part, you can do it. So only skeletal is voluntary, cardiac and smooth are involuntary. Like if you tell your artery to squeeze, it will not listen to you. Or esophagus, it will not listen to you. So those are involuntary, cardiac and smooth. Only skeletal, those are attached to the bones, are voluntary. Now, if you see a skeletal muscle tissue under the microscope, the muscle fibers are long cylindrical fibers, cylindrical shaped fibers like this. So this is one fiber, this is another fiber, okay? And number one, long cylindrical fiber. This is skeletal. And multiple nuclei are present inside a fiber. So within one fiber, you'll see many nuclei. And nuclei are not located in the center. They are located attached to the membrane. Peripherally located multiple nuclei. So number one, cylindrical fibers, multiple peripherally, not centrally, peripherally located nuclei. Okay. Number three, inside the muscle fiber, you will see lines like this. Those are called striations. So you will see striations like this. Okay. So striations present inside the fiber. So that's the skeletal muscle tissue under the microscope. Now, if you see cardiac muscle tissue, so now we'll see cardiac. Cardiac muscle fibers are also cylindrical shaped. So, cylindrical fibers, but usually a single nucleus. Single nucleus. Occasionally we see two, but not more than that. So usually single nucleus, but sometimes we see two. Number three, inside the cardiac muscle, you also have striations. These striations are not as clear as skeletal, but striations are present. Okay, so that is another property, histological property, striations. Most important is in the cardiac muscle tissue, you will see thick bands like this that connect one muscle fiber to another. So this band, thick band like this, that is called intercalated disc. That is very important. Intercalated discs. Okay. So present only in cardiac muscle tissue. Intercalated discs. Okay. And another thing is only present in cardiac muscle, that is called branching. From one muscle fiber, branch arises and goes to the next. In skeletal, also the fibers are cylindrical but no branching. In cardiac, cylindrical fibers but branches arise from the fiber. So branching. So these are the properties of histological properties of cardiac muscle tissue. Repeating again, cylindrical fibers, striations are present. These two things are same as skeletal, but are the things different? Single nucleus, usually, branching and intercalated discs. These are not present in the skeletal muscle tissue. Okay, so that is the cardiac muscle. Now, if you see a smooth muscle under the microscope, very simple. Smooth muscle is very simple. Spindle shaped fiber, not cylindrical, spindle. That means both ends are tapered, middle part is wider, like your eye. Both ends are pointed like this and middle portion is wider. That is called spindle shaped fibers. So this is one fiber and centrally located nucleus, single nucleus located centrally. So very simple. Spindle shaped fibers, centrally located single nucleus, nicely located in the center. So these are the properties of smooth muscle. So this is another smooth muscle fiber, this is another smooth muscle fiber, like this. Okay. Since they stay together, it sometimes becomes difficult to see under the microscope. Individual fibers look like all are together, but this is actually how they are. Okay, no striation, no intercalated disc, no branching, just spindle-shaped fiber, centrally located single nucleus out there. Okay, so now we have finished all four types of tissues. First we talked about epithelial tissue, then connective tissue, right? That nervous tissue and muscle tissue. Those are four types of tissue. Now we'll talk about a topic that is called inflammation. Very commonly heard term, inflammation. What is inflammation? Inflammation is the response of your tissue to injury. If any injury occurs, how your tissue responds to that, that is inflammation. By showing inflammation, tissue responds to an injury. You all know that some changes occur at the site of inflammation. What are the changes? Inflammation occurs. Swelling, redness, heat, pain, right? Sometimes can be felt or not, but pain is created there. If it is too weak, then you won't feel it, right? So those are the signs of inflammation. Now, remember one thing, inflammation is actually good for you, because when inflammation occurs, immune activities in that area increases. Okay, more antibodies go there. Okay, more white blood cells go there. Blood flow increases, so that helps in healing. So inflammation is good, and you also know that something has happened, right? By looking at the signs, like fever. When you get high body temperature, that tells you that something is wrong, right? And that is a good thing for you. Anyway, so why those changes occur in the tissue? When you get an injury, at the site of injury, tissue releases some chemicals. So at the site of injury, this is the tissue, cells in the tissue releases some chemicals at the site of injury. What are those chemicals? Important ones are histamine, heparin, endorphin, and prostaglandin. Prostaglandins, different types of prostaglandins. So these are some chemicals, those are released at the site of injury from the tissue. Your tissue releases these chemicals. And what happens, everywhere you have the capillaries, blood vessels, right? So these are the blood vessels in the tissue, and histamine particularly, this one causes vasodilation, dilates the blood vessels. So when blood vessels are dilated, get wider, more blood flows there, right? So if the blood vessels get wider, dilated, more blood goes there. Okay, that gives you the redness, because when more blood flows in certain area, that area will look red, right? Makes sense? Because blood is red. So more blood is flowing there, circulating there, that area becomes red. So that is redness. When vasodilatation occurs, in the wall of the capillaries, you have pores, many holes. So those holes, just look at me, this is the capillary and there are many holes. Now when it gets wider, the holes get bigger, right? And water or fluid leaks out, comes out, and that causes edema and swelling. So from the blood, fluid comes out and accumulates in the tissue, and that causes what? That causes what? Swelling, edema, right? Fluid comes out from the blood. Make sense? So we got redness and swelling. Now endorphin and prostaglandins, in the tissue you also have nerve endings. So these are the nerves, and these chemicals, particularly prostaglandins, stimulate the nerve endings here, and that causes pain. So some chemicals cause vasodilation and some chemicals stimulate the nerve endings, irritate the nerve endings that creates pain in that area. So that's why you see those changes. Now if you take antihistamine, antiprostaglandin, which is acetaminophen, you take Tylenol, that the painkiller, that's actually inhibits the prostaglandin. So if you inhibit them, the symptoms are gone, right? So you have to inhibit the chemicals to reduce the inflammation. But reducing the inflammation is not always good because inflammation is needed. There are many factors that can reduce the perception of pain. The main thing is that threshold. Some people have higher threshold, some people have lower threshold. If threshold is high, you won't feel pain easily, okay? Why the threshold changes? Several chemicals are involved in it, okay? To change the threshold of pain. And also mental status can change the threshold, right? You can learn how to tolerate, right? Or your experience. All those factors are involved in changing the threshold of pain, each person. So the threshold is different person to person because of many factors. Okay. After the injury, we know that healing healing or tissue repair takes place. So just I'll mention the steps that takes place during the healing or tissue repair. First, collagen fibers are produced in that area that fill the gap, and collagen fibers are produced by the fibroblasts, you must remember, and the name is telling you fibroblasts, right? Fibro, that means these cells produce fibers. So the fibroblasts will produce collagen fibers that will fill the gap. Then macrophages will engulf the dead cells, dead tissue, to clean that area, because dead cells are not needed, should not be there. So macrophages engulf and remove the dead cells from that area. That is cleaning. So first is filling by the collagen fibers, right? Filling the gap, then cleaning by the macrophages. Is it clear? Then next is branching from adjacent blood vessels. New branches are formed and they enter into that area. So new blood vessels come from nearby blood vessels. That is the branching, we can say, right? And last is covering. New epithelial tissue is formed to cover the surface. So easy way to say is filling, cleaning. Number 3 is branching. Number 4 is covering. Make sense? So filling by fibroblasts, collagen fibers, cleaning by macrophages, by phagocytosis, then branching from adjacent blood vessels, and covering by the epithelial tissue. So those are the steps of healing.
What's the first one?
Filling.
Yeah.
Filling is by the fibers, collagen fibers, right? Okay. So that's the process of tissue repair. Okay.
When the epithelium is replaced, is it just them reproducing? Or is it just stem cells reproducing?
Stem cells, yeah. Remember, stem cells are very important in healing the tissue, injured tissue, because new cells, we know that To produce new cells, we need stem cells. Yes. Okay.